Tim Vermanda is a regular gardener, but there's a lot you don't know about him. He is a graduate of Indiana University. He is also a graduate of United Theological Seminary in SMU. He is a teacher at the Art Institute right here, right over there. And also, Tim is a communications consultant for the United Methodist Church Disability Ministries, Deaf and Hard Hearing Committee, and the co-chair of the Indiana Conference Disabilities Ministry team. Tim is here most weeks with his wife Sherry, and they have two beloved cats, Blaze and Chessie. So, friends, join me in welcoming Tim to the garden.
Hi. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley of number 4 Privet Drive were proud to say that they were perfectly normal. Thank you very much. They were the last people you'd expect to be involved in anything strange. When you think about it, as Carolyn reminded us earlier, we all like to be normal, at least most of the time. We like to be like everyone else. We don't like to have mail flooding into our house like that. We don't want to have the owls roosting out all over our lawn. We don't want to show the dents on our fenders. And we don't want to have those messages from somewhere intruding on our life. But sometimes the message from those who send the owls is there, and it is different. It tells us that it's okay to show a dent, or 2, or 3. It's okay to receive mail that challenges you. And it's okay to think about what it means to be normal and to get beyond just a setting on the dryer, which is the way it is at our house. That's about the only normal place we have. It isn't always obvious when we think about things, but an organization like SAWS, whom I'm happy to speak with today, groups that set prisoners free from the captivity of their homes, groups that open up worlds to those who were once trapped in their homes, are doing a new thing. And they reach far beyond what we call normal to those of us who have been told, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. Sometimes it's just as much our expectations, our ideas of normal that cause us to limit ourselves and to limit each other. Now, a few weeks ago here, we heard about addiction and mental health concerns. And one lesson from that was that what we can all know is that God loves each of us. There's no qualifications. God just loves each person. And there's no disqualifications. God just loves each person. I'd like to add something to that. We can show that God loves everyone in a demonstration that we sometimes call grace. If you remember our first video, Harry, who doesn't even know what normal means, finds a lesson in God's grace. It appears out of nowhere. It's determined to get through. And it comes with an invitation to a new life. It is grace that tells us that glasses people are just like the rest of us. It is grace that when the owls start roosting in our own front drives, or the mail floods in, or even if we find we have to wear glasses ourselves, tells us that sometimes what's in the Gospels isn't at all normal. We've just grown accustomed to it. And that's the case with this story today in John. In chapter 5, we are told, one day Jesus went to Jerusalem. Now, near the sheep gate, there was a pool called Bethesda. And many chronically ill people who were blind, lame, or who had skin diseases, gathered here. Because there was a belief that if the water was stirred up or troubled, the first person in would be healed. Now, one of these people had been there for 38 years because of his illness. And so Jesus came along, and he learned how long this man had been there. And Jesus asked him, "What would you like to happen?" The man said to Jesus, "Well, I try to get in, but I don't have anyone to help me when the water is troubled. Someone else always gets into the water first." And then Jesus said to the man, "Well then, pick up your mat and walk." And right there and then, the man picked up his mat and began to walk around. Now, a little later in the story, it tells us the man who was cured did not know who this person was because Jesus had disappeared into the crowd. And there, both Jesus and the man, speaking for himself, answered questions. John goes on to tell us that Jesus got into some trouble with the religious authorities. He had cured a man on the Sabbath, the day when no one should do any work. John also tells us that Jesus' answers, which were kind of a smart aleck reply at times, that questions that came from these authorities became one of the reasons that they decided to get rid of him. This was about a lot more than just disrupting a day off. It was about disrupting what people thought should be the order of society. Men like him have been shrugged off from society, left in corners, left to fend for themselves. But as the writers of the Gospels tell us, and as the translators of the Gospels sometimes obscure in their translations, what Jesus did with this man was more than just a cure of get up and walk. Jesus restored people back to a place in society where they could speak for themselves, where they could learn for themselves, where they could join with others, removing their isolation and joining them to the abundant life that he promised. And so likewise, God calls us to be her agents in reaching out to those left behind. Even today, as we celebrate the work of SAWS and remember the many other agencies and ministries that are the hands of the church in reaching out, we also work to provide more, like a place where the glasses people can join the rest of us equally. God calls us to reach beyond being normal, to reach out to those who have been forgotten, and to follow Jesus by stirring up that water.